Stih joins us now. She's written a book called Worth Saving. Hey, Judith, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Thank you.
So, Worth Saving, tell us about the book. What made you write this book?
Well, I'm not an author. I'm an artist. But I needed to process my life after 22 years of growing up with an alcoholic father. And then when my mother passed, she, there was never a time in my life I wasn't caring for my mother. And then when she passed, this grief came to my door and would not leave. It was unexpected. It was horrible. So I decided to sit down and write because I had created journals in the past for people that were sick. And I created journals for myself during the caring for my mother for 7 years. I wrote everything down that I did to stimulate her. She had severe dementia. So I decided to write for myself. And so I just sat down and I made 3 separate columns. One was forgiveness from age 8 to 12. One was pain from 12 to 15. And one was anger from 15 to 22. And I just started writing. And I would just sit down and write because I was getting to the point where I was wearing my mother's pajamas. I was sleeping on her floor. I mean, we were getting bad here. This grief was not leaving me. So from the age of 8, I realized that there was something wrong at my house. And I was at a Catholic school, so I would run into church and ask God to please help me, forgive. And my father was a drinker. But understand, he had 6 brothers. They were a German family, a good Christian Catholic German family. The Monsignor was their best friend. But what they did is they would sit around the table at night and have a shot in the beer and listen to the radio. None of them thought they were alcoholics. 2 of them passed from alcoholic poisoning late in life. But so my father didn't think he was an alcoholic. And people with addiction don't believe they are addicted. They believe they can stop at any time. So when these, I would say, interventions between my mom and dad would happen, later on, of course, my father would feel bad and he'd say he wasn't going to do it again. But drinking was never what he thought it was. So I wrote everything from 8 to 12. And then at 12, I started to see pain. And that's why I wrote pain, because now I'm older. I see the pain in my mother's eyes. I see the pain for my siblings. I realize that I'm never going to college. I'm never leaving these 2 alone. My life was never going to be what I thought. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote about all that pain. But then at 15, it went to anger. And that is when I experienced what I call a significant emotional event. And I heard my mother screaming, my hair, he's pulling my hair out. And I ran down and I got my trusty broom, because that's what I used to beat him. And he ran out the door. I remember this so vividly. I've asked God many times to take this vision away. But he runs out the door, and I go to comfort my mother. I know exactly where she is. She's almost down on her knees by the wall in the dining room. And I touch her head, and I say, Mother, your hair is here. It's okay. And then I immediately wonder where he is, and I run to the window. And I'm staring out the window, and there's a light post at the end. And I say, hit the post, then you'll die. Please, God. I wanted my father to die. Of course, he didn't. And then I went back to comfort my mother. And I don't remember, she went up the stairs, but the next morning, she was dressed for work. See, we always lived in the projects. This was our first home. So my mother had to go to work. She said all she ever wanted was to be a mother. And when the door slammed behind her was the hardest day of her life. But she was dressed for work. I saw what she went through. And I had to walk with her because I walked to school and she walked to work.
Wow.
She didn't call in sick.
Right.
My mother taught me strength in adversity. But I will tell you, 20 years later, and there's a picture in the book, they had a black tie dinner for my mother. She became the head of the cafeteria for all the schools in that school system. She kept going. She never quit. She knew what she loved, being in the kitchen. She knew, this is good. Spouses need to know your whole life doesn't have to stop because of things that are happening behind closed doors. And But anyhow, so now I'm getting married. I'm afraid to leave the house. I'm 22, and my dad dances with me at my wedding. And he says, Judy, I will never hit your mother again. And that was in November. And in June, my mother called me. She says, Judy, I need a place to hide. I'm going to divorce your father, and he's going to kill me. And so she came to our house to hide, and the stuff went on between attorneys and whatever. But the Monsignor said to my dad, if you get a divorce, Molly will stay in the church, but you will not, because it's your fault. You are an alcoholic. You need to admit it. You need to go to AA. So he did. Now, whether he went to stay in the church or because he loved our family, no, he did it because he loved our family, because he joined 3 different groups. He would go on Saturday mornings, Friday nights at the church, and Sundays at the brunch once a month. And so after 4 months that he was doing this, my mother called and said, your father wants to come home. And she said, your brothers don't give a darn. They don't care what the 2 of us do. Your sister, she was 8 years younger, so she was only 13. She wanted them to get a divorce. So we're coming to your house. Whatever you say is what we will do. So I was scared to death.
So what happened? What happened? We want to get to the end of the story. We only have a couple minutes left. What happened?
Okay, I hadn't seen my dad in 6 months. And my dad came in, and his demeanor was so different. He wasn't like the guy that pulled the phone off the hook, off the wall before. Oh, yeah. And so my mother, we sat down, and my mother said everything. And then my father said to me very quietly, Judy, I promise you I will never drink again. And I turned to look at him, and I looked in his eyes. I still see it. In that moment, I loved him. I loved him. I felt sorry for him. I loved him. I wanted to hug him.
Wow.
And I turned to my mother, and I said very calmly, Mother, Dad has done everything that he was supposed to do. He deserves to come home. And she said, but what if he hits me again? I said, we'll deal with that at that time. The man has done everything. He deserves to be at home. And there were 5 other brothers, and they always drank. And we had big to-dos, christenings, birthdays, and the booze flowed everywhere, including at our house when my sister graduated. And there was booze. He never drank. He said, just because I don't drink doesn't mean they can't drink. He never touched a drop.
Wow.
And it wasn't until he passed that we found out all the wonderful things he did. But when my mother turned 94 and she had dementia, I decided to bring her home. I decided she was not going to go to a home. Wow. And I had no clue how to care for her. And I wrote in the book all the things you get for help and what you don't get and whatever. But I kept a copious journal of how I stimulated her for those years.
So let me stop you because I don't want to run out of time. And again, the book, this is Judy Stih. We're talking to Worth Saving. You have all these stories about redemption and the wonderful story you just told us about your father, how he came through it, and then you accepted him and all the forgiveness. And there's lots of tips in this that can help people. What do you hope within just a couple of minutes as we wrap this up that people take away from reading?
I hope
this?
I wanted this book to be free. I wanted every alcoholic to read it. Every journey is hard. I wanted them to see my dad's journey. I wanted them to keep going and not quit, even with everybody drinking around him. I wanted people never to put their mother in a home and to see all the things I did. I wrote journals for 7 years of every way that I stimulated her, even when she didn't know me. And people said, she doesn't know your name. And I said, I know hers. I just want them to see, don't give up love. It's all about love. I prayed to God, and what did he give me? Love for my dad.
Yeah, and see their life. Yeah, see, and there you go, and getting very emotional, and that's great. It's raw. The book is raw. It tells you everything. And
let me tell you why the book is called Worth Saving, because I wanted my father to die. But then when I saw what he was like, I said to God, he was worth saving.
Yeah.
And that's how I came up with the name of the book.
Wow, and that brings it full circle, Judith. Thank you for bearing your soul and telling everybody things that can happen, how you can come out on the other side. And this is a book you can get on Amazon and, of course, Barnes & Noble. Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I always wanted to give the book away, but Alcohol AA said it would be soliciting. And I wouldn't have written said if I didn't want to get the message out, and when the book was written, one of the authors called me and said, "Where's your book?" And I said, I can't do it. She said, "Remember your audience. This book is not about you.
It's about
remember
your
audience."
Yep,
right,
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judith. And thanks to all of you for listening to this version of the show.